Welcome NDL fans to another edition of Spotlight Showdown. This week we'll be shining a bright spotlight on what most consider the biggest game of the week in week 3. We'll touch base on some potential upsets that could happen in weeks 3 and 4, and we'll roll out the first edition of my Power 6, basically 6 teams who get to feel all warm and fuzzy because they got mentioned here on a recorded video broadcast on the NDL2. But first, let's talk about what I'm sure everyone is thinking about and talking about on AIM chats across the NDL nation. The big week 3 game of the week. Number 2, Boise State, coached by Big Mike, and number 3, Ohio State, coached by Buckeye 76, will battle for virtual football bragging rights at the virtual horseshoe. Now, as soon as the second pick in the draft was announced by our esteemed Commissioner AJ, that Big Mike would be coaching the Smurfs, instantly, Boise became the prom queens of the NDL. Oh my God, it was said, Big Mike is going to march right to the national championship game with no roadblocks. And some said he better schedule someone because the conference he is in is just whack. No pun intended. Okay, it was intended. So then Big Mike goes out and he schedules at Notre Dame, at Ohio State, and at UCF, with the game at home to Utah. At first glance, you're like, he went out and scheduled some teams. Well, let's look closer at this schedule. Notre Dame has an unproven coach who has never had a winning season. UCF really just doesn't have the talent to match up with Boise State realistically. And while the coach of Utah has had 4 winning seasons in his last 5 and 1 conference championship, Utah is just overmatched, and the game is being played on the Smurf turf. And Boise State is almost unbeatable there on the Smurf turf. Which brings us to the current matchup. On paper, Boise State is heavily overmatched in terms of talent. If you look at the graphic above, you will see that just about every position Ohio State has the advantage, as they are either more talented, go 3 deep at the position, or both have 3 players at the position that is better than the Boise starter. Coach Buckeye has talent in abundance. It could even be argued that he has the most talent he has ever had in his stints at Ohio State, as compared to the rest of the league. But let's look closer. Even this talent disparity in Boise and Ohio State. If you look at the key advantages, for the Broncos you will notice that they have the advantage at wide receiver, left tackle, and both safety positions, and the quarterback positions are a wash. Now if you think about what does Big Mike coach team need to be successful? A stud quarterback, check. Stud wide receivers that can go use or catch the ball, check. A fast ball hawking safeties to snatch away surefire completions out the air, check. So you can throw that talent disparity right out the window because Big Mike has all he needs to be successful. Also, if we delve a little further into the matchup, you would notice that these 2 coaches have matched up in the regular season 5 times before, all in favor of Big Mike, as most of the games were heavily lopsided victories, which gives me the reason to think that Buckeye may feel he just can't beat Big Mike, even stating, quote, Boise will embarrass us in his Georgia post-game conference. Despite, at the surface, with the advantages of talent and a home game for Ohio State, due to these coaches' histories and the subpar showing of Ohio State against Georgia, I see at least a 17-point victory for Boise State. I would actually call it a huge upset if Ohio State is to pull off this win. While no one doubts the pedigree of Coach Big Mike, one would have to think, is a win over Ohio State, if Boise is to run the table enough to propel Boise to a national championship game? Also, one would have to ask, would a lopsided or close victory favor Big Mike more? One thing is for sure, that to really make Boise State out of conference schedule look good, that these teams, all 4 teams, would have to win a minimum of 9 games. And I'm not so sure I see that happening, but only time will tell. But again, as for this game, number 2 Boise State versus number 3 Ohio State, I see Boise winners, 38-14. Now on to some other news. Let's take a look at possible some possible matchups and interesting matchups through week 3 and 4. One of the matchups I'll be looking forward to is the week 3 matchup of unranked Michigan versus number 7 Virginia Tech. These two have a long-standing rivalry and usually play tough, close games until a mistake happens. But something is telling me while Virginia Tech is another big favorite to run the table in their conference, they're going to slip up. This is where it's going to happen. Hart has dropped the last 3 meetings in this matchup with VT run and gun. But ever since, he is out for revenge, and this season he has the talent to taste the sweetness of victory. The key in this game is will Michigan be able to win the turnover battle? If they can avoid careless mistakes and the big hit, I see an upset in the making. While Virginia Tech was able to avoid the letdown and heartbreaking loss to Purdue with the big hit, I don't see that same luck this week. I got the Wolverines upsetting the Hokies, 20-17 in Blacksburg. In week 4, we have a few interesting matchups like K-State and West Virginia, the U at the Horseshoe, and Arkansas versus Alabama. But the game that I got pegged for the upset alert is LSU at North Carolina. Right now, LSU is stuck in first gear, and the clutch seems to be broke, as LSU just hasn't looked very good in its victories over overmatched South Carolina in the Cup and their Week 1 win over Tulane. While LSU has been moving the ball well and controlling the clock, they are struggling to score points, mostly because they're losing the turnover battle, as they have turned over the ball twice as many times as their opponents. The Tar Heels have not started off the season well either, dropping their first 2 games. They were beat haplessly against Nebraska and just lost a heartbreaker to Tennessee. But the Tar Heels have loads of talent on defense, and while I don't expect the Tar Heels to be ranked when this game is played, I expect the Tar Heels defense to keep them in the game all the way to the end of the game. And with a little offense just at the right time, they could steal this one from the Tigers. So for the sake of having this game on upset alert, I got the Tar Heels 24, LSU 14. Now, we're down to my pick 6 of my top 6 teams. Now, before we get to my top 6 teams here, I want to let everyone know that this is not based on stats or anything like this or anything like that. It's just from the matchups of the first couple of weeks, how the teams have fared, and just, I don't know, kind of randomized. But for this episode, these are my top 6 teams. At number 6, I have Arkansas. The Razorbacks are off to a 2-0 start, and not against any powder puffs like some of these other top teams in the NDL. They beat quality opponents in UCLA and ranked Oregon. If they can beat the Bulldogs in week 3, look for a huge matchup in week 4 with Alabama. Number 5, Alabama. Bama is off to a 2-0 start by just killing a couple of cream puffs. But a win is a win, right? Bama is just sticking to the SEC motto, schedule every cupcake. Number 4, Oklahoma. The Sooners are off to a quick start as well, beating a solid but Masoli-less Oregon. What is Oregon doing? Not playing Masoli, I just gotta say. And just ran all over San Jose State. State on the 4th spot this week. Number 3, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has a solid win over in-state rival West Virginia, which is a very talented team with a very talented coach. So this is a big obstacle overcame by Virginia Tech. The near letdown against Purdue was an oddity, but the Hokies are still 2-0 and number 3 on this list. And number 2, Nebraska. The Huskers are picking up where they left off last season and just winning. With impressive wins over solid to good teams in Arizona and North Carolina, this earns them the 2nd spot on my list. At number 1, the Florida Gators. The Florida Gators are number 1 this week on my list. They won both games handedly and looked impressive doing it. This team is loaded with speed and at times just seems unstoppable. They can put up points in a hurry. this is definitely a team you want to keep an eye on all season long. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining me for this long edition of the Spotlight Showdown on NDL ESPN or NDL2. Again, this is your senior writer, 6 feet, signing off. Thanks for joining us.